All right. Um, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of our Research Journey webinar series. Last 2 weeks, we started touching on the topic of choosing a method. Today, we are especially going to focus on the mixed methods research that combines both the qualitative and quantitative approaches. So our esteemed guest, Mr. Christian, will guide us through today's meeting. So sit back and relax and let's learn together. So Mr. Christian, if you can hear me, kindly take over.
All right. Thank you so much. Please, can everyone hear me?
Yes. You are very clear.
Oh, okay. Thank you once again. As we all know, this was a journey we began some few weeks ago, and we've come across a lot of things, and we still want to continue. So from the beginning, we spoke about how to develop your interest, your area of study, so that it will help you and guide you to get a problem that will help you work on. Again, we also spoke about all the various aspects of research, the quantitative, the qualitative, and the approaches. Today, we are continuing with the third approach, which is a very broad approach, unlike the quantitative and the qualitative, because in this case, you realize that we combine both the quantitative and the qualitative approaches of our research or of conducting research in just one study, a single study.
Hello, Mr. Christian.
Yeah.
It looks as if your voice is a bit low. I don't know if you can do something about it.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, I think.
Thank you. So as I was saying, today we'll look at the mixed methods research. And it's not just about the designs that we use for the mixed methods research, but what are all those things about the mixed methods research that it's becoming important that as a researcher, you might wish or want to do a mixed methods research rather than focusing on either the qualitative or quantitative. So we'll look at what is the general nature of mixed methods research. What are some of the examples of mixed method research studies that when you pick a study, it will tell you that, oh, this study have used a mixed method, not just by name, but by the approach that they have employed in their work. Also, we will look at what kind of research problems that call for typical mixed methods research, but not qualitative or quantitative works. We'll also look at some of the the merits and demerits of conducting or using the mixed method. Then the final thing we'll focus on in today's lecture will be the designs in doing mixed methods research. Because when we were talking about the quantitative and the qualitative methods of conducting research, we also came across designs that will help us to know how data is collected and how to analyze data from our participants. The same thing happens in the mixed methods as well. So clear focus will be on the intent of the design. What mixed methods design are you using? So what intention does the researcher have that enables him or her to use a particular design under the mixed method? We look at what are those choices available that you want to, or that you want to go through before you do a mixed methods research, and also what are the various designs under each design. So we have the variants. There are several variants for each of the designs. We will look at all those things. So as we begin, let's do a little reflection. Let's pause for just 30 minutes and go through some of the works that professionals do in their day-to-day activities. Let's reflect. Then we'll state some examples and see in which case that mixed method research is important to provide feedback or to provide response to some of those practices. One, you will see that physicians will consider quantitative lab results, okay? And in considering these lab results, they might go alongside with a patient's qualitative life history and maybe symptoms about a particular disease that they have diagnosed, and that will inform the kind of treatment they will give to the person. So someone like a diabetic patient, even after diagnosis, you would want to observe the person throughout some time, and that observation might come not in the form of quantitative lab results, okay, but through what? Your interaction with the person day to day. You see, something like this, you need two forms of data. Again, you will see that financial consultants will analyze market trends, and along with these market trends, you have stories of individual decision making when they are offering advice. And people also in the field of politics, you see, politicians who focus on these statistical trends from 1996 to 2020, what has been our vote gain and vote loss in so and so region. As they are looking at these figures, they also look at the personal stories of the constituent when they are choosing a course of action. How do we plan our campaign? How do we go about all these things? And this informs their decision. So looking at this, you will see that there are several examples of combining both quantitative and qualitative information. Okay, that cuts through all human aspects of life. So for example, if you listen closely to those who broadcast news on the television, and maybe they are reporting about a natural disaster, or let's say about the votes cast in a particular election, you realize that the trends that they put out, the number of votes that they put out are supported by individual stories. Okay, there is someone who will come and tell you the story about how or why the votes are rather increasing or decreasing for a particular candidate. And also those of us that are into sports, you see sometimes when you are listening to sports commentary, either there are 2 or 3 people there. One person will be focused on narrating what is happening on the field. Another person is focused on giving us statistics about the game and the individuals and all those things. So you see that in each case, these 2 types of data needs to be used so that a clear idea about what we are observing or what we are looking at or what we are exploring will be seen. Then another thing we also want to do is that I want us to do is, let's look at this. Why is it so important that researchers are focusing on mixed methods? What makes it so important? So when you look at this figure in front of you, we conduct research to make discoveries, okay, either in the biomedical field, either behaviorally or in epidemiological areas, education, business. The main tenet of the research is to make discovery. And these discoveries might come from either qualitative or quantitative data. But we need more in-depth into this discovery before we know why it is so. Hence the need for a mixed methods research. Also coming down, you will see when it comes to looking at the efficacy, the effectiveness, the implementation, and the dissemination of information and all those things. We distribute information about an intervention, not based on only the quantitative data or qualitative data that have been gotten, but based on the intersection or based on implementing or using these 2 forms of data to make an in-depth analysis. Then we can make very clear decisions. That does not mean that if you are using only quantitative, you are not doing the right thing. Or if you are using only qualitative, you are not doing the right thing. You are doing the right thing based on your interest and what you are doing. So let's look at the general nature of mixed methods research. I have put here is that when you see researchers using the two methods, okay, where data collection and analysis involve both the quantitative and the qualitative research approaches in a single study, you will see that this particular study is a mixed methods study. Again, when there is an extension of rather than a replacement, so here does not mean that you are replacing the quantitative aspect of your study with a qualitative aspect or vice versa. Here we are only extending either the quantitative with a qualitative approach or either the qualitative with a quantitative approach. It is not a replacement. So you see some people will go and collect some data and totally change the whole data into one form and leave the other. No, we are not replacing methods here in mixed methods research, but we are rather extending what we have started with something that will give us more insight and understanding into the phenomenon that we are exploring. Again, when you're looking at mixed methods research, its goal is to draw from the strengths and minimize the weaknesses of the quantitative and qualitative research approaches. So in a situation where I am conducting only a qualitative research, I have a lot of people there, but per literature and authority, my sample size I'm using is 6 so that I can control for saturation. How best would the input or information from these 6 people help me to be able to generalize over a larger population? So in this case, there needs to be an extension of this qualitative aspect using the quantitative aspect so that the issue about small sample sizes in qualitative research can be addressed when we are using the quantitative aspect of the study. Again, we are saying that even though each approach seeks to validate knowledge as truth, neither is absolute in its form. What this means is that the fact that you are using a quantitative approach does not mean whatever you are looking for with a quantitative approach is the truth and final aspect of it. No. And the fact that you are using the qualitative approach alone does not mean that you are justified, you become a saint or something, even though we have people that are purely qualitative and purely quantitative. You realize that all these approaches have philosophies that underpin them. And as some people are saying knowledge is subjective, others are saying knowledge is objective. And another people are also saying that, well, even though knowledge is subjective to an extent and knowledge is objective to an extent, what about we putting the two together so that a subjective knowledge can be extended objectively, or an objective knowledge gained from research can be extended subjectively? All these characterize the conducting of mixed methods research. So, all right. So we are saying that why the need, okay? And sometimes it's funny because someone who come and ask you, what is mixed methods? If you are saying mixed methods research, when you pick a study, how do you see it? I mean, how do you know the kind of approach that have been used in this study? All what I will tell you is, if you want to understand the nature of all approaches to research, not only the mixed methods, beyond their definition, because some of us, we are so rooted in definition that we can, in fact, define 10 pages, 15 pages of any kind of research you want to conduct. But when we pick a practical published research article, we cannot even make way of it per the kind of approach that have been used. So moving beyond just definition to practice, moving beyond theory to practice, let us develop the habit of examining studies. I mean, those that have been published, those that you can find in your department, those that you can find in the library. And most of the published ones will be in the journal articles. Let us develop that habit of examining these articles. Then we can know, yes, this is the approach that has been used. So without much ado, I want to. Okay. Sorry for that interruption. So there are instances where the need for the use of mixed methods is very important. As you can see from the screen, I don't want to read, but we'll go through one or two so that we get more insight into what I want to say. Good. So in conducting research, sometimes you realize that there is a need to obtain more complete and corroborated results. What this means is that you as the researcher, you have felt that the kind of information you have collected, maybe using just the qualitative approach or the quantitative approach, is not enough. So you need to collect more data using the other approach so that you have what? A more complete information. Okay, so in this case, you see, when you look at the study of food safety knowledge practices and beliefs in Hispanic families, when you look at this study, you will see that one aspect of the data that was collected was not enough to explain the food safety knowledge, the practices and the beliefs of the individuals. These researchers have to do more in-depth data collection using the other approach so that they can have a complete data and generalize over their population. Again, when there is a need to first explore before you administer results. So there are several examples of this. In cases where you have not much information about the individuals, but you need to conduct a study there, you will see that you would have to go and talk to the people and observe the people, take information from them, and that information will help you to develop the instrument, that is a quantitative aspect. And this instrument will now be used to collect data from the sample that you get from this population. So in instances like this, you will need a mixed methods research approach. Again, you will see that when we want to enhance an experimental study with a qualitative method, is it the last time we spoke about the experimental research designs, we were quiet on the qualitative aspect of it. That was because we're only looking at how best a quantitative approach can be used to conduct experiments in research. But in some situations, you would have to collect qualitative results or qualitative information so that you will use that information to enhance your experiment. So when you look at the study of acupuncture-based intervention for women that experience low back pain during pregnancy. So this particular intervention, after everything has been done, you will see the intervention has some kind of influence or effect in treating the low back pain for these women. But how to give out this particular intervention was a problem. So researchers have to now go and talk to these women, talk to experts before they can come out with what a very appropriate way to give this intervention to these women because of a whole lot of issues. So when there is this need, we need to conduct a mixed methods research. Again, a need might exist where we need to describe and compare different types of cases. So in this case, if you as the researcher, you want to develop an in-depth analysis of cases. So for example, you have small family medicine clinics, okay? So it will be very important for you to compare how these clinics treat patients, maybe for example, their cardiovascular diseases. In this case, you will see that you have to collect quantitative data on the patients. So these patients, hospital files and records can be collected where their history or the history about their cardiovascular disease are in this document. But you see that you still have to collect data from the doctors, the nurses, and all those medical experts that are treating these people. This will help you to be able to compare how the treatment or the history that you have gotten from these files or folders. You have more insight into how the treatments that are given to these people are affecting the reduction or development of their disease history. In other cases, you will see that a need exists to involve participants in the study. You see, sometimes, as we say, ethical issues are very important. You need some particular group of people in your study. But it is not always the case that when you go into your population or your sample, these people will be ready. So let's take for this instance. A researcher seeks to bring about change in understanding some issues facing women. So here you collect data through instrument and focus group to explore the meaning of the issues, okay, for women. Now you will see that these women have to participate in your study. They have to play a major role for you to understand the problem. So the larger understanding of change, which guides the research and inform all aspects of the study from the issues being studied. And all this, the data collection and all that thing that will help you to make reforms will come from these women. So even though you have collected quantitative data from them, it is not enough. You have to go back and go and talk to these women and see their understanding of the issue that you have come to collect the quantitative data on. Additionally, you will see if we want to develop a problem or a program, in the development, we have to implement and evaluate. You cannot just develop and put it there. So the implementation and the evaluation, you see one stage is the development, and the development have several stages. Then the next stage is the implementation. During all these stages, there could be data that can be collected so that it will help us to refine the program, okay? Because at the end of the implementation, you might have seen that some things are not right. Then how do you make these things right? Through evaluation. So when you evaluate your program through data collection, and this data collection cannot be through only qualitative or quantitative. You have to collect this data both ways so that you know what you need to change and what you need to keep as the program develops.
Yeah, Mr. Christian.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems your voice is still low. Some of them can't really hear you. So if you can reposition yourself a bit for us.
Okay. Is it okay now? Sometimes you have to bear with me that the network is not.
It's not really okay. I think we will go with this.
Okay. But is it okay now to some extent?
It's okay. It's okay now.
All right. All right. Thank you. So in all this, we are not saying that there is an absolute aspect of conducting mixed methods, because in this life, everything you do, there will be positives, there will be negatives, but then we try as much as possible to ride on the positives so that we will use it to cancel out the negatives and achieve the aim that we want to achieve. In this case, we might look at some advantages of using mixed methods. As I have said from the beginning, you've already outlined those advantages that we need not to talk much about. So the first one, you will see the strength of one approach to make up for the weaknesses of the other. As I have given the example on the sample size issue, okay? Sometimes not only the sample size issue, but the information that you have collected, let's say you only went to issue questionnaires to your participants, how they feel towards what they are answering, their perception about it, their attitude, you don't know. You only distributed a questionnaire, they only tick. You and I are victims of this. People bring us questionnaires, we only tick and go because we are supposed to tick. Okay, and you realize that sometimes this affects the validity and the reliability of some of these instruments. Then we have to go back and then collect a qualitative data so that we know in depth how these people's views are relating to what or the information that they have given to us. Again, you see researchers are able to use all of the tools of data collection available rather than being restricted to only one. That is maybe a qualitative or quantitative approach. As I have said with the instruments, we use this so that if you need to collect data quantitatively or qualitatively, I think the voice has gone down again. Let me use this. Hold on. Please give me some few minutes. I mean, seconds or something.
Sure.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, host, please unmute my second distance so that I'll be able to use it to talk. I think I'm having challenges.
Okay, please, can you hear me clearly?
This is okay.
Oh, thank you so much. So as I was saying, there could be the issue where mixed method research will help us to answer questions that cannot be answered by quantitative or qualitative approaches. Then someone will ask, in what situation can you say there is a question that we cannot use qualitative to answer? Let's look at this question. How can a treatment be adapted to work with a particular sample in an experiment? So in this case, you see that it is not only about the treatment, either working or not, that we can use either qualitative or quantitative to determine. But in this case, we are looking at how can we adapt the treatment to work with a particular sample. So for example, this COVID vaccine, people are taking it and nothing is happening to them. People are taking it and something is happening to them. So you see, these people went back and they gave out guidelines about if you have this kind of chronic issues, do so and so before you take this vaccine. this data that have been collected is not only about using the qualitative or quantitative approach. So you see, there are some questions that only one approach will not help you to answer. Now, again, mixed method research encourages the use of multiple worldviews or paradigms. So as I said, knowledge is not fixed, okay? As your beliefs and values change, so does knowledge. Because there is someone there who will say, for me, truth is just one, based on whatever I know. Someone will say, no, there are different faces of truth because so and so has changed, this has changed, and this has also changed. Then in that case, the person's beliefs and values are changing as his or her knowledge is also developing. So rather than typically associating ourselves to, oh, this is the truth and that is it, Miss Mete says, no. Let us look at how other people also perceive or see what we are seeing. So when we collect quantitative data, there is the need to also collect a qualitative data to corroborate whatever quantitative data you have collected. Then another advantage of using the mixed method research is it is practical in the sense that the researcher is free to use all methods possible to address a problem. So let me use my thesis as an example. I am going to look at how, the competencies of teachers when they are using technology to teach in the field of mathematics. There are questionnaires that you can send to this field for these people to answer, oh, we have this, we don't have that. But would that be enough for me to stand here and say, oh, when you take Cape Coast Metropolis, these teachers are well-rooted, they have competencies to do this, to do that when it comes to teaching? I might be lying. So I would have to fall on another data collection approach. That is observation. So I have to watch these teachers teach with a particular technology. And I can now, from my observation I am making, I can now conclude that, oh, you said you have this, but when I observe you, you did not show this, you did not show this, you showed this. Is this not nice looking at a kind of study like this to use the mixed methods approach? Very, very fantastic. So that's why we are saying that it is so practical in nature that you as the researcher, you are free, you are open to use all the methods, qualitative, quantitative, use them to address your research problem. Again, mixed method research enables scholars to produce multiple written publications from a single study. So you have conducted a study where you use both qualitative and quantitative. From your analysis of both data, you even have the chance, okay, to be able to publish either the qualitative aspect of your work or the quantitative aspect of your work. In this case, you have two publications in your name. But when you have gone to use only maybe the quantitative approach, you'll be forced to publish only in that, and you have only one publication. And you and I that are in academia, we know the extent to which publication of articles raise the standards of scholars used for promotion and all those things. Again, where, as I have said, where you and I need multiple publications so that we can have opportunities to get promotions, to get titles, we can go into the mixed methods, publish this, publish that, because it will give you a large set of data to work on. Okay, so just putting it in your thesis writing alone, aside your thesis writing, This is also one of the out-of-the-box advantages when you want to do research using mixed methods. But with all that said, knowledge, as I say, is not one way. You might come across some challenges when you are using mixed method. One challenge we face is the question of researcher skills. Now, you will realize that there is this individual who is so rooted in quantitative aspects, like me, very quantitative. Then I meet someone and the person says, I should use mixed methods in my work. You see, I'll find it very difficult analyzing, collecting, or using all the methods about the qualitative aspects. And that could be a very great challenge for me. We also have people that are purely qualitative when it comes to data analysis, data collection, design of instruments. They are best. But the moment these people are faced with mixed methods, you see, there is issue with the quantitative aspect. How to analyze data becomes an issue. And all those skills are things that someone who is just aligned to one aspect of the research faces when that person wants to use mixed method. Again, so you see, data collection and analysis procedures of both quantitative and qualitative research, they pose a problem when you are aligned to only one aspect. Additionally, when you are talking about ethical considerations with conducting research, so in collecting data, you know, when you are conducting a qualitative research, where you need to have that face-to-face personal interaction with human beings, collect data on them, there are some situations that you have to be so much well-rooted in. Something about questioning. As you are questioning people, your questions should not seem so demeaning. Your questions should not seem so racial to them that they have issues. But someone who is so skillful in that qualitative aspect knows all these guidelines. Then this is me. So quantitative, then I am going to conduct interviews. Do you think, even if I have training, 1 year training about how to conduct interviews, I'll be able to conduct this interview as perfect as someone who is so much rooted in qualitative work? No. And this is also a challenge about skills. So the skills we all have in research might pose challenges to us when we want to use mixed methods. Again, the question of time and resources. The question about the sufficiency of time to collect and analyze two different types of data. So let's say I have 10 to 11 months to work on my research. Then I want to use mixed methods. I now have to go and collect quantitative data or qualitative data. In either case, I have to spend time analyzing these two types of data. You see, someone who collects quantitative data and analyze, get the results. Then from the result of the quantitative, the person has to go back and collect qualitative data. Within these 11 months, you even realize that it is in the 8th month that you're able to collect the quantitative data. Is there sufficiency of time to finish it up? This is a challenge when you're using this method. Again, are there resources to collect and analyze both quantitative and qualitative data? So here, maybe I am in campus. So I have to collect data, let's say in Accra. Then the transportation, collect quantitative, collect qualitative. Sometimes with the qualitative, you go and they will tell you, oh, we are not available. Come this time. Teachers normally do this. I have issue with data collection from teachers. You go and they'll tell you we are in class. Oh, come the next day. You go, they'll tell you we are not around. Oh, come next week. You see, it's a whole header on its own. So, in as much as we are saying it is one of the best approaches to research, some of these challenges, people look at it and say, no, I cannot do this. Let me just align myself with either the quantitative or the qualitative aspect. Again, the question of educating others about the value of mixed method. So you see, researchers may collect only qualitative data and then analyze it quantitatively, such as in content analysis. And most people do this. In content analysis, you take a particular document, analyze the document based on your problem. So in that content analysis, that is a qualitative aspect. But people, whatever information they have gotten from those documents, they will try as much as possible to quantify it. Then the qualitative aspect of the research is off. Because when you are using any approach, it has to reflect in your data collection and your data analysis. So if your data analysis is so blank about the approach that you have used, then why did you even use that approach? Okay, so if you want to educate the value of mixed methods using some of these things, it poses a whole challenge. Now, to the bigger issue. What are those designs we have when we are dealing with research methods? I mean, mixed method research. You just do a simple Google search about types of mixed method designs. You see, there are many. They will give you 6 or 7. Some people will say this, some people will say that. But from Criswell and Clark, as we have seen the educational research, Criswell says generally there are 3 designs of conducting mixed method research. Based on your problem, based on your objectives, based on your research questions, based on your research hypothesis, that will inform the kind of design that you use when it comes to mixed method. Let's take the first one. That is the triangulation mixed methods design. Some people also call it concurrent mixed methods. Some have the name of nested. I mean, there are a whole lot of names out there. But from the authority that, I mean, almost all works I have read about designs, either mixed methods, either qualitative or quantitative, were citing Criswell. So I deem it very important that if all these authorities, professors, doctors are citing this man for how he handled research designs or how he handled research, then we should follow his approach and categorization of the mixed method designs. The first one is the triangulation mixed method design. So as you look at the figure, we have the quan. Quan means quantitative and qual means qualitative. When it is in capital letters, it means that much focus about the kind of data, the interpretation and analysis you do are based on either the quantitative or the qualitative or both. So when we take the triangulation, there is the need for us to collect both qualitative and quantitative data at the same time. Okay? And after collecting this data, we analyze, and the results, we use either the quantitative or the qualitative to corroborate the other, to see to what extent are they confirming each other, or to what extent are they going away from each other. So you will see some saying, oh, I am using the divergent triangulation mix method. Someone will say, I am using the convergent triangulation mix method. Some will tell I am using the concurrent triangulation mix method. All is about triangulation. In this case, both qualitative and quantitative data are collected at the same time. You don't collect qualitative first before collecting quantitative. You don't collect quantitative first, analyze, interpret, and the result will let you go and collect qualitative. No. Here, as you have gone for the data collection, without analysis, you collect both quantitative and qualitative data. And they are very important for your interpretation. That is why Chris Wall made them capitals. It means that in this design, there is much focus placed on the two types of data that you collect. With the second one, explanatory mixed methods design. Yes. Some will name it sequential explanatory or explanatory sequential. The word sequential, what it means is that one happened before the other. So in this case, you see, Chris Wall have capitalized the quantitative data and wrote the qualitative data in small, alphabet. The arrow showing that the qualitative data is a follow-up to the quantitative data. As in my study, I would have to collect quantitative data, analyze, get the results, and see the kind of competencies that these teachers possess. Then I have to go back and select some of these teachers and observe them to teach using technology. Then I will be able to know, oh, okay, in a group, they are saying that they have this competence, but individually, they don't have this competence. You know, quantitative data is collected on a Likert scale basis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Strongly agree, and all those things. You will realize that in one case, if it is a 5-point Likert scale, you will not get a mean of 5.0. Why is that so? It means that some are agreeing, some are disagreeing. But you lump all those people together, and when they agree, say, oh, they agree that they have this. So there is the need for us to do a follow-up analysis. That is the observation. Sometimes it can be in the form of interviews, so that we see individually, do these people have the same perception, the same attitude, the same behavior they have reported in the quantitative data? I think there was a hitch there. Can I continue?
Yeah, it looks as if your network isn't that stable.
Yes, so I think it has come back.
Okay.
Thank you. So you will see that here, the qualitative is a follow-up to the quantitative, and the much focus is placed on the quantitative. Then the question will come as, is it in all your research questions that you need to do this? Please no. In my case, even though I am using the explanatory mixed methods design, you see that my main focus is the quantitative aspect of the work. I am only using because I have 5 objectives. Only one is the research question. And that is the one that I am going to do these mixed methods on. The rest, I have to analyze them quantitatively based on the data I have collected from the first research question. Okay, so yeah, the majority of the data collected and analyzed is that of the quantitative. Then you use the qualitative to patch it up. Another design, that's the third category, is the exploratory mixed methods design. So as you can see, here the qualitative is capitalized and the quantitative is written in. In this case, we use the quantitative to build up the qualitative. So let's get a difference. In the explanatory, the qualitative is a follow-up to the quantitative. But in the exploratory, we use the quantitative to build the qualitative. So this is how it works. We might want to develop an instrument. And if it is about attitudes, you know, attitudes about Ghanaian students towards a particular phenomenon. We cannot just go and put some attitudes there for the students to say, oh, we do. No. The best thing to do is to go pick a sample that represents those people. Put them all sorts of questions that are relating to what we want to achieve. After we have gotten the information from them, we can now come back, sit down, use that information to design a survey, an instrument that we can now give out to a very large population. And now we can now say, oh, the attitudes of Ghanaian students are so and so. So you use the quantitative to build up on the qualitative, because the qualitative forms the basis of your data collection. That is why in some research, you need to use the exploratory mixed methods design. Before I continue, there's always this issue. Oh, my design is mixed method. Then the supervisor says, what type of mixed methods? Asamaba. There is problem. Then we'll be there. We don't know what to write. A whole lot of things. So by the close of today's seminar or the journey so far, when that question pops up, what kind of design are you using? Why are you using it? And how is it important to your work? We should be able, okay, to explain vividly why a particular design fits our work. Now we are going to take these designs one by one and look at what intentions will make someone to select this design. What choices do the people have that will make them use the particular design? And many more. So the first one is the triangulation or convergent design. So the intention you as a researcher that you have before you use the triangulation, one, if you want to obtain different but complementary data on the same topic in order to best understand your research problem, so you collect both qualitative and quantitative. These two types of data complement each other. Okay, none is important than the other. So let's say issues about motivation. Oh, they give us this, agree, strongly agree, disagree. Then you put it there. They do this, they do that. That is just the quantitative aspect. But when you go and conduct interviews, you will see that there's a whole lot of things people are saying about motivation that is not captured in your instrument. So in this case, you see that these two types of data complement each other, and it helps us to understand our problem better. Again, if you want to bring together all the strengths and weaknesses of quantitative and qualitative methods, so if we are using a quantitative approach, you see that we'll use a large sample size. We'll have objective responses, measures, that is the questionnaires and all those things. We'll be able to look at the trends and we'll do generalizations. But when we are doing qualitatively, we'll need a small sample. We'll need a subjective interpretation of the results, which are very detailed and in-depth. So when we combine these two types of data, you will see that we'll be able to explain our problem very well. So if you have the intention of using a large sample size, as I said earlier, we lump all the responses of a large sample size and we use one data point. We say, these people are saying this. But if you are not interested in that, aside all those people, you still want to see individually, subjectively, how are these people's interpretations of what you have gone, the kind of data you have gone to collect. And this will give you more detailed and in-depth analysis of your problem. You can use the convergent or the triangulation design. Another area, if you want to compare quantitative statistical results with qualitative findings for complete understanding of the research problem. So there are cases where you will see that, let's say you have 50 people that have responded to a questionnaire, and about 35 of these people are saying we strongly agree. And the remaining people are saying we strongly agree. You see the extreme of these two types of responses. You realize that when you go to pick about 6, 10, 15 people to talk to, they might all be moving towards one aspect than what your quantitative results have given you. So if you want to compare to see truly what we have collected on the quantitative is the same as what we have collected on the qualitative, then we do the convergent design. Now, what choices do we have if we want to use the convergent design or the triangulation? One, if the researcher has limited time for data collection, okay, in the field, and must gather both types of data in one visit, as I was saying about teachers, you go to this school and give all your questionnaires, and you want these people to do, just go through your interview process and you collect information. They will say no. Go and come, go and come. But in situations, you will see that it is better when you collect these two types of data at once, because you don't have time and these all kind of resources. So you go and on one day or on one visit, you collect these two types of data. You don't do go and come, go and come. So that is a choice for you. Two, if the researcher needs both quantitative and qualitative forms of information from every participant, someone say, how can this be possible? And it's not possible to collect data from all participants per se. But there are situations where our sample size becomes the population. Let's take some of these organizations, their staff. Their staffs are not even up to 30. So from these people, you can issue quantitative instruments to them to respond to. And you can even have time to do a qualitative observation or interview or focus group discussions. Because someone will say, the interview is too big. How can you interview 30 people when you are the same person who told us that for interviews, when you reach 6 people, then saturation sets in? Let's not forget that qualitative data collection methods is not only an interview or observation. You can use focus group discussions. Focus group means that the people are in groups. So if it is for all higher top management or middle management or lower management, the top management are in one group and you sit with them and you bring out the issues. Then they talk, they say, let's go to schools and see. If it is about HODs, you see that all the heads of department of the various departments, mathematics, science, geography, all these people, they can sit on one round table and you pose the questions to them. In this case, if they are 30, can't you divide them into 15, 15 and collect data from them? If you think sitting on one round table, 30 people is too much for you. So in this case, focus group discussions can be used to collect this type of data. So when you need to collect these two forms of data, both quantitative and qualitative, from every participant, the convergent design should be your best choice. Again, if the researcher has skills in both quantitative and qualitative methods of research, so we have people there, they're very good. When it comes to qualitative research, best. When it comes to quantitative research, best. So these people will always want, so let's do everything together. Let's collect data together. Let's do this together. They might want to use the convergent design. And then another one, the mixed methods team has individuals skilled in both quantitative and qualitative research. So not like me, where I am doing my research alone. Sometimes you will see that departments do their research in teams. So in some of these teams, there are people that are good, much skills in qualitative, and there are people that have much skills in quantitative. So as you go for your data collection, you will see some people are collecting the quantitative data while others are collecting the qualitative data. In this case, you collect your two kinds of data together and you go your way. Then, what are the specific variants? Such just as we took experimental designs, where we have the true experimental design. And under the true experimental, we have the post-test, pre-test, and all that. The same thing happens in all the designs. So when we take the convergent design, there are different variants to it. Even though we know we are collecting the two forms of data at the same time. Let's see the first variant, the parallel databases variant. So here, two parallel strands of data are collected and analyzed independently and are only brought together during the interpretation. So the two data that you have collected, both qualitative and quantitative, you analyze them separately. Okay, after reporting on the quantitative, then the qualitative follows. Some will say report on the qualitative first, then the quantitative follows. In this case, you will see none of their interpretation is dependent on the other. The interpretation you give to the qualitative data does not depend on what is happening in the quantitative data. And the interpretation you give to the quantitative does not depend. So that's why they are parallel. You know, parallel lines, they never meet. Okay, so in this case, you analyze them separately, but report on them during your interpretation, so that someone who looks at the quantitative, looks at the qualitative, will say, okay, when you collected the data with only the questionnaire, these were some of the things that are lacking, but in the qualitative, I have been able to see, oh, these are the issues that these people have. So two independent data. The next one is the data transformation variant. So I think this is very common. The last time we were doing the qualitative aspect, someone asked, what if you collect a particular qualitative kind of data, then you will see that the trends or the themes that are emerging can be quantified. It can happen here, where the interviews you have conducted, you've seen that, oh, this number of people are towards this approach, and this number of people are towards this approach. You can quantify. So 50%, 30%, 40% of these people are saying this. Then from there, what are the specific things they are saying? That's where the qualitative comes in. So after initial collection and analysis of the two data sets, you can use the procedures to quantify the qualitative findings. So sometimes you create a new variable based on the things that you have. And these things or these variables can be quantified, as I just put it forth. The third one is the questionnaire variant. So some of us, even though we want to collect the two forms of data, we don't have the time to be conducting maybe interviews, focus group discussions, observations, and all that. So in our questionnaire, we set some questions that are open-ended. Oh, what is your opinion about this? How do you see this? Then the person, after answering your quantitative questions, come to the qualitative and give their opinions on those open-ended questions that you have. So the data you collect from those open-ended questions can be used to validate what you have gotten from the closed-ended questions. Sometimes you just put on him this, and this. If yes, why? If no, why? You see? So these people will write whatever they want to write and still justify why that. Then you see, even though you have collected one form of data quantitatively, the why will help the person to write more for you to understand what is happening with the what. That is the quantitative aspect. So as you can see on the screen, the closed-ended results or the information are used to, the open-ended information or the result are used to confirm the result from the closed-ended questions. There are several advantages and disadvantages to using convergent designs, but time will not permit us to go much into them. Okay, so that one we can read more. The next we want to look at is the explanatory sequential design. We said more about it, but what are some of the intentions of using this particular design? One, when the researcher needs qualitative data, so that based on the qualitative data, the researcher can use it to explain, okay, the quantitative aspect. Sometimes, as I said from my earlier example, you could see that some of this quantitative data that you have first might have some outliers, some results that are so surprising, some you don't even understand. Then you need to probe more. You need to probe further, okay, by collecting the qualitative data so that you can use it to make sense of the quantitative data that you have. In this case, it's not nice to use a kind of design like this. So here, I said earlier, you collect the quantitative data first, analyze, see the results, what the results are saying. Based on that, then you now go and collect the qualitative data. Another intention of using the explanatory sequential design, if you want to explain some mechanisms through qualitative data that shed light on why the quantitative result occurred and how they might be explained. Okay, you know, human nature keeps changing. So you collect a quantitative data and some 2-3 days later, you see that, no, I need to probe into this. Why is this the case? There, the qualitative data comes handy. This will help you to throw more light, okay? Help you to explore, expand your results and be able to explain why your quantitative results are the way they are. Again, when the researcher wants to form groups based on quantitative results and follow up with the groups through subsequent qualitative research. So, yeah, we need information about some particular group of people. We could give out a questionnaire. So let's talk about attitudes again. We know people have positive or negative attitude or even perception. People have positive or negative perception about something. But you that is going there, you want to see what are some of the reasons why people have this negative attitude towards your problem or towards the phenomenon you want to investigate. In this case, you can send a questionnaire or any quantitative data collection instrument. After you have gotten that data, you will be able to classify this group. These are so and so that have positive attitude or perception on what I want to explore. And these are the number of people that have this negative attitude. Then let me focus on the people that have the negative attitude. Then all your qualitative data, your qualitative results or the study you are going to conduct will help you to get this purposeful, characteristics about the participant. Sometimes it even helps you to sample them well. So you want to know about, let's say, drunkards, okay, in a particular society. So you go into that society, whether there are 10 drunkards or not, you have no idea. And you think you can just go and collect or interview anybody at all and be asking the questions about their rate of drinking and all that. No. Researchers say that sometimes it is best not to just go and observe. You can, through quantitative aspects, collect data and know the proportion of the number of people that have the issue you want to explore. Then in selecting your sample size, it will determine whether you are undersampling or oversampling. Because we know what oversampling and undersampling does in research. And in most cases, it's the undersampling that we report on, because it is highly likely that where you are going to collect the data, you will not get everybody. So we want to minimize all these sampling errors. For the qualitative data, we need some form of quantitative data collection to be able to do this. Then what choices are there if you want to use explanatory sequential design? One, if the researcher and the research problem are more quantitatively oriented, you see, here you see that only a bit of the qualitative aspects will be done, but almost everything will be about quantitative. So just to throw more light on my problem, I have to do something small in the qualitative aspect, even though I know I don't even intend of using that qualitative aspect, just to see the reality from the ideal. Okay. Again, if the researcher knows the important variable and has access to quantitative instrument for measuring the construct of primary interest. So here, we all want to collect quantitative data. Oh, we don't want to design new questionnaires. There are standard questionnaires there to be used. So here we have pre-informed ideas about our variable. It is not the qualitative aspect of the data we collect that will help us to get new variables. No. Here, the analysis we do with the quantitative variable is how to inform us to go and do qualitative observation or data collection. So in this case, the primary focus is on the quantitative instrument you are going to use to collect the data. In my case, there are standard questionnaires to collect data on teachers' competencies. By the end of the day, after collecting the data on teachers, and so what? Is that the case in practice? So I might design, based on the competencies I have, I might design an observation checklist just to go to the field and what these teachers teach and think, oh yes, they have done this, they have done this, they have not done this. Okay, so in this case, you see the qualitative is just something like a subset of the whole research, the qualitative, and the main thing is about the quantitative aspect. Another choice is when the researcher has the ability to return to participants for a second round of qualitative data collection. In this situation, let me see. Fine. So you have colleagues in places that you know, oh, this person, when I go to him to observe or interview him, I'll get the data. And because now, yeah, let's come to what is happening with our supervisor. Because your supervisor says do something about mixed methods. Then quickly you say, oh, after my quantitative data analysis, I will go and collect qualitative data. You already have in mind who you are going to interview, who you are going to observe. So here, there is no back and forth. Okay, so when some of these come into play, people want to use the explanatory sequential design because collecting quantitative data is fun. People say it's fun. People say you can collect from a whole range of people. But time that people have to be observed and to be interviewed is scarce. So if you have a particular people that you can talk to them, they are your colleagues. So quickly, they will respond to you. Here you have the choice to use what? The explanatory sequential design. And in this case too, when the researcher has the time to conduct the research in 2 phases, yes. So after the quantitative data, you can sit after 2 months, 3 months, go and collect the qualitative data. If you have the time to do all these things, go ahead and use the explanatory sequential design. But make sure that it makes sense to your problem, to your objectives, your research questions, and your methodology. Now, what are some of the variants that are part of the explanatory sequential design? The prototypical follow-up explanation variant. So in this case, you see, the researcher places priority on the quantitative aspect of the research and subsequent qualitative phase only to help explain the quantitative research. So even though you are using explanatory sequential design, we can ask you, what type of explanatory sequential design? But sometimes we only put it into writing and it shows that this is the variant we are using. So here you collect quantitative data and just go and collect qualitative data to explain what your quantitative data is in. And in most cases, the qualitative data is collected from just a few people, okay, just to see reality, what is happening. Again, we have the case selection variant. So as I have said, if you want to select cases for your study, so one, the researcher places more focus on the qualitative phase instead of the initial quantitative phase. Here, the researcher is focused on qualitatively examining a phenomenon, but needs initial quantitative results to identify and purposefully select the best participants. So in this case, you see that the data collection is at play here. But the data collection is from who? As I gave the example about those who consume alcohol or substance, you might see that that is my area I want to go to. But who do I involve in this study? Okay, so I want to go through the explanatory. I collect quantitative data, then I collect qualitative. I go back and do more in-depth interview, observation, focus group analysis. This will help me to identify this person, even though the group are saying they disagree. He is saying he agree. Now let me follow this person and see what are some of the factors that are making him to agree to what the group are saying they disagreed on. So in this case, the case selection variant is very important. So sometimes you read research articles and you see that the whole work is about just one individual or two individuals. Meanwhile, when you go to the population, they have stated a very large population there. By the end of the day, their reports are about only one or two individuals. This is the case selection variant of the explanatory sequential design. Even though they collect quantitative data first, the main focus is on the how to select an individual so that more in-depth research can be carried on that individual. Then we have the exploratory sequential design, which is the last design in the mixed methods. Here, the researcher has the intention, okay, to develop and apply a quantitative measure, survey, intervention, digital, anything. So in this case, you see that you need a large group of individuals to be able to carry your study. But the kind of data to collect, how the intervention should be enrolled or rolled out, and what new variables are among the people, you have no idea. So first, you go with the intent to collect qualitative data. And this qualitative data you collect will help you to come and then design the quantitative aspect of your study. So you use the quantitative to build up, you see, on the qualitative. So you can conduct interviews on 6 people. After that, the response you get from 6 people can be used to design a questionnaire. This questionnaire will help you to collect data from 100 people, 200 people, 300 people. Also, in enrolling out an intervention, sometimes you need to know about the characteristics of the people before you be informed how best I can enroll this intervention so that I can achieve my aim. You don't just go and enroll the intervention and be looking for positive results. You need to go there, collect the qualitative data, know the characteristics of these people. That will help you to be able to enroll the intervention in a way that will best suit your sample or your population. There are several examples. Another intention. So here, if you want to develop instruments, experimental activities are not available readily for you to use. That is when you use the exploratory. Okay, as I said from the beginning, some of these things are used to develop quantitative instruments, interventions, getting new variables and all that. Again, when your variables are unknown, someone say, how can you go into a study and your variables are unknown? When you get there, you will know that there are situations where you just go, you want to explore. During your exploration, that is when the variables will start coming. Then after getting that variable, you can now go on a large scale to explore how that variable is working among a larger sample. When there is no guiding framework or theory, so you see, sometimes the framework or theories that we see around, some of them are developed or designed using these designs. Qualitative data collected, which informs the design of the framework or the theory so that you can use it to explain on a larger scale people's attributes and behaviors. Also, when there is a need to make an existing quantitative instrument as specific to the participant or a culture group as possible. We know, if not most, okay, you see some of these standard-based questionnaires that we use are developed in the Western region. Hey, if I say Western region, you understand. In the West, not Ghana, Western region, I mean abroad. You will see that the wording, the kind of variables that they explore among their sample is so different from whatever that is happening in Ghana. So you have a hold of that questionnaire and you look at it, so I don't think some of these things will apply to my sample or my population. But how do I know whether this applies or not? You have to go to the people, observe, question them about some things, and see how some of the extent to which they possess some of these variables and the extent to which they don't possess, so that it will help you to design a questionnaire or an instrument that will be very specific to the people. Let's say you are designing something about fractions, and I don't want to mention any village before people call the police. You go to a village where they have nothing to do about pizza. Then you are using pizza as an example for the intervention to teach them fractions. It becomes very difficult for them to orient themselves with the pizza. And some of those things happen in our classrooms here as well. There are things that they are saying that you and I have no idea about. But if you take time to go to those people and query them, get more information about them, then you come back and you design a very specific instrument that will help you to collect what? Data from them. Sometimes you collect quantitative data, you analyze and you realize, no, there's something wrong. This is the sample that I have. This particular the result I'm getting does not apply to them. It means that you have not made use of the exploratory sequential mix methods. Then, when you have the intention to assess the generalizability of qualitative results to different groups, okay, so you have collected a qualitative, or maybe you did a qualitative study. Then, collecting data from qualitative methods or using qualitative methods, sometimes you use very small sample size, okay, 6, 10, 15. How do you generalize some of these things to groups that are not even around, or even, let's say, in the same locality, but there are different groups? So these qualitative results that you have, you can use them to develop instruments, and these instruments can be used on a large sample. This large sample will help you to be able to generalize your qualitative findings over this population. Very nice. So let's see one. If you want to test aspects of an emerging theory or classification, or you want to explore test aspects of a theory, so you just take a sample, a small sample, and see the extent to which the theory applies to them from the data you collect from them. This will help you to come out with variables to explain the theory. These variables can help you to classify the individuals and know the different groups of individuals you have. And from this, you can use this to develop interventions, experiments on a very large group of people. The second one under this intention, if you want to explore a phenomenon in depth and you want to measure the prevalence of its dimensions, so the in-depth exploration here will be from qualitative data collection. Whatever you have, the prevalence, okay, of this on some dimensions of individuals have to go through the quantitative aspect. So we see that when we have these intentions in conducting research, some of these designs should come handy. They should be of help to us so that our work becomes not that easy, but our work flows smoothly. Now, what choices do we have for conducting exploratory sequential design? One, if the researcher and the research program are more qualitatively oriented, yes. So there are people who are so much rooted in qualitative work that you see them, they want to do more of qualitative, but they have a large sample that they also have to attend to. So they go do everything right to collect this qualitative data. And sometimes they outsource this qualitative results to people that are into the quantitative aspect. And these people design the instrument so that they can now distribute the instrument over a large sample. Again, when the researcher needs to develop a product, and this product, it can be in the form of instrument and all that is substantively relevant and culturally sensitive. We said that with the intention. Again, if the researcher has the necessary time to conduct the research in 3 phases. So in conducting the exploratory sequential design, unlike the explanatory sequential where there are 2 phases, here there are 3 phases. Let's say, for example, in designing a research instrument, you first collect your qualitative data. That qualitative data does not directly translate into the instrument. You have to analyze that qualitative data, go through development processes that will help you to come out with the instrument. That is a developmental stage. And this instrument will now be used for the quantitative aspect of your study. So in this case, you collect qualitative, you use it to develop an intervention, and you want to collect a quantitative data to build on your qualitative results. Again, when the researcher is interested in the transferability and generalizability of a newly developed product, so the product is there. You don't want people, it's just like, I don't want to use this E-level thing. There are some social phenomena that you need a small group of people to use a product, and they give you feedback on the product. Their feedback will help you be able to transfer or put that product out there in the open for everybody to use. So you see that even the exploratory is not just for educational purposes, but even for industry, for services, we can use this kind of designs. Again, when the researcher identifies new research questions based on the small sample qualitative result, that can be best tested with a large quantitative sample. You can do the exploratory, because at the end of the day, your main focus is on what is the qualitative data saying? What are the results? Okay, so you look at all these things so that it will help you to be able to conduct your work as quickly, smoothly as possible. All right. Now, let's see some of these variants under the exploratory design. 1, the new variable or conceptual framework or theoretical framework development variant. So as we have looked at the intentions, if you want to develop a framework, okay, here you formulate a quantitative question or hypothesis based on your qualitative findings and proceed to conduct a quantitative phase to answer the question. So there's this issue about differences between males and females when it comes to the use of a particular product. So you know very well that you want to test whether there are differences between males and females when it comes to that phenomenon. So in this case, instead for you not to jump into conclusion, you go and collect or conduct this qualitative phase. The information that you get or the findings from the qualitative aspect of the data will help you to design new research questions. Okay, and these research questions, they have constructs, they have variables. These variables can help you to see what is the interrelationship with these variables and your phenomenon. There and then, there is the issue about conceptual or theoretical frameworks. So sometimes in designing these frameworks, it is best suited that we use the exploratory sequential design. And the variant, the specific variant to use is what? The new variable or theoretical framework development variant. Again, the survey development variant. So I think this is common. Here, the initial qualitative phase plays a role in helping to define the measures and the questions in a survey instrument. It can be a questionnaire. So after development of the instrument, then you can now administer it to your representative sample. So qualitative data phase, development of the instrument, then the quantitative data phase. Another variant that we'll look at is the intervention development variant. So even though you know that pre-test, post-test comes in purely quantitative research, especially the experimental design, you will see that using mixed method, that is the exploratory sequential, you have the chance to still do your pre and post test and still collect more in-depth data. So in this case, you collect qualitative data that will help you develop the intervention or the experiment. And that will work with the participant and be meaningful to them. Okay. Then the qualitative data collection will focus on the activities or the pre and post measures that might be included in the intervention. So before you even enroll out the intervention, what are some of the measures, okay, or activities that are qualitative in nature that you need to focus on? And during the rolling out of that intervention till the end of the intervention, there are a lot of things that happen between that interval. Some are purely qualitative. How do you control them in your study? Here, the intervention development variant of the exploratory sequential design comes to play. Another variant is the digital tool development variant. So you see, if we say digital tool, let's take the Moodle, the intervention by UCC. That's the Moodle. I don't know how they went through, but let's see. Here, that project should begin with a qualitative exploration so that they will understand what measures and questions that need to be asked of participants, you and I, okay, in testing that digital tool. So, we want to enroll this tool. You are of the technology age. What are some of the challenges that you face when you are using digital tools? Then we can now give all this information out. Then this information we have given out will now be used to design the digital tool that will, the word, hopefully, because the fact that we have given a qualitative response as to the challenges that we face, and even sometimes we give recommendations as to how the challenges will be addressed, does not mean that in its entirety, the intervention will work. Okay, so that it will hopefully work. And when it is tested and it works, then finally the tool is now brought to a large scale so that you and I can use it. So you will see that in designing even digital tools, people just don't go through the system like that and develop. No, they have to go through some kind of designs, combining both qualitative and quantitative phases of research so that they can have a very working development digital tool to use. Then the last aspect of today's seminar, there is this issue about how do you even describe the design in your thesis? So someone will say, oh, I'm using the mixed method design because of this, because of that. Then they will be asking, based on what? Justify, that particular word, justify, then we don't know what to write. So these are the 5 phases by Criswell and Plano-Clark that you can use to design or to write a design, especially the mixed method or any design at all. Let me just put it like that. Any design at all, because today is the ending part of dealing with methods. So any design at all, how do you report them in the thesis? When you go to that section, research design, the first thing you put there is the name of the design. Oh, this study is based or is using or we employ the so and so design. Now, as the name of the design mentioned, we want to know more about the design. So there you discuss the phases of the design. What are the issues, the areas of focus of that particular design? If it is the explanatory sequential, you know the phases. Oh, in this design, as the quantitative data is collected first, analyzed and reported, followed by a qualitative data phase that will be used to explain the quantity. So you see all these things backed by literature. Okay, then the third aspect is you have to discuss the integration of the design in your study. Some of us, we put the design there, write about 6-10 pages about it. Then they ask you, how are you going to use that design? There is issue. So every design should have a way that it should be integrated in your study. Oh, this design will be integrated in my study first by collecting data in this way, using this, so and so, and that. Don't forget that the discussion about designs comes in the form of both data collection and data analysis. All those things have to be part. Then the fourth, what are some of the reasons for using your design? So in this case, what are the overriding benefits? As we have seen, all designs we will use have both advantages and disadvantages. So if you cannot justify the overriding benefits of the design in your work, it means that you don't even know how or why you are using that design. So you have to give reasons for that design. These are the phases of this design. This is how I'm going to integrate it in my work. Because so and so has done this, so and so said this. Okay, then at the end of the day, you have to cite the methodological references. If it is about mixed method, explanatory, sequential explanatory design. What did authorities say about it? What does Chris Ward say? What does these guys say? How do they conceptualize that particular design? You cannot just write and leave it like that. So the justify comes in the form of what literature do you have to back what you are saying. If you are saying mixed methods have this phase and this phase and this phase, what literature is backing that? Okay, so these are the 5 steps we have to go through when we are describing a particular design, not only mixed methods, a particular design in our thesis writing or any report at all. So you could see that from today, as the seminar began today, entirely or in its totality, we look at why the need for a mixed methods design. What is its nature? What are some of these examples of studies that when you look at this study, you see this study is a mixed method study. We went further to look at the designs, the 3 overriding, the 3 general designs when it comes to conducting mixed methods research, why we need to select them, the choices we have, and the different variants that we need when we are using a particular mixed methods design. And based on that, how do we describe these designs when we are writing a thesis report? On that note, we have come to the end of today's seminar. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. That was very, very, very insightful. Thank you once again. We would now open the floor up for questions. So if you have any question, please raise your hand. Feel free to raise your hand. So we will take the question in batches. So 4 for the first batch, and then it continues. So if you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so sorry, Mr. Moses, if you can hear me, please go on with your question.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to thank Mr. Christian for the wonderful presentation.
Sure.
I want to ask about the he said that you could use open-ended questions in your quantitative parts. No, he said you could use a questionnaire for gathering data. And then he said that you could use open-ended questions as part of the questionnaire, and you can use that one for your qualitative explanations. And I want to ask if that alone is enough to qualify as a mixed method. I don't know if my question is clear.
Okay.
If it's not
Yeah,
clear,
it's
I'll
clear.
come back.
It's clear.
Yes. If it's not
Okay.
clear, I'll come back later to ask it. And then also, he spoke about the observation. Is that one also enough? Because if it is so, I believe we will not so much shy away from mixed methods. Because he said his personal thesis is that he would go administer the questionnaire and then follow up with observational one where he will go with a checklist. Is that so okay for a mixed method? Because some of us were afraid of mixed method, but per what he has briefed us today, I think we may not shy away. But if they are enough, you should clearly tell us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moses. Mr. Gabriel. Mr. Gabriel. Hello. Yeah, Mr.
Hello.
Gabriel. Yeah. Please go on with your question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to commend the presenter for such a powerful presentation. Whereas these methods may be applicable in the physical sciences, it appears that from all the examples you gave were related to social sciences. So I want to know, how can we, in practical terms, explain the bearing of this or the usefulness of these methods in the physical sciences as well?
Okay, please let me come in before you go in.
Okay.
What type of research do you conduct in the physical sciences?
Ours is mostly experimental.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Vashela, forgive me if I didn't get the name right. If you can hear me, please go on with your question. Yeah, Vashela, please ask your question. Okay, it looks as if the person is having a problem. So, Mr. Christian, okay, Vashela,
Yes.
okay, please go on with your question.
Okay, so pertaining to the concurrent makes better design. Okay, I'm dealing with if I want to deal with two groups of people, perhaps teachers and students, and should I use the same questions for teachers? I decided to do interview for
Hello, Vashela. It looks
I
as
think
if
I got a question.
Okay. So, you can take these questions for now.
Okay. So with the first person that asked about the open-ended and then the observation. whether they are enough to corroborate the quantitative findings. Yeah, yes, they are enough. As I have said, the main focus of that aspect of the research, that is the explanatory, is that more focus is on the quantitative aspect. You know, when you are doing the quantitative aspect, you'll be at liberty to do a lot of inferential analysis. So sometimes you only need to see or observe or take responses from people, whether this inferential analysis result I am doing or whether the quantitative result I am getting, whether it is the case in practice with individuals. That is the observation. But with the interviews, I made an issue about you having time and resources. So you see, when it comes to time for collecting the data, questionnaires, when it comes to time for collecting the data, you might not want to go collect quantitative data and come and collect qualitative data, or vice versa. So in this case, when you are using the concurrent method, where you want to collect the two types of data together, you could fuse in your qualitative aspect of the data collection, that is the questions based on the qualitative. So as they respond to your quantitative, you're also responding to the qualitative as well. Mind us that there is no importance placed on either the qualitative or quantitative when it comes to the concurrent. At that place, or the triangulation, at that place, all the types of data you are collecting is very important. Okay, so you can decide to use only the observation, only the open-ended questions to collect it. But the observation you are going to do is to see whether there is the existence of this phenomenon among your group, your study sample. Is there existence of what you are exploring? Because on a larger scale, from the quantitative data, you might see whether it exists or not. But with individuals, is that the case? Because when we are in a group, you see people overshadowing others. There could be outliers that could be influencing the group decision. But individual observations, does that hold when it comes to individual observations? So using observations will be enough to ascertain or to be rooted that, yes, what my quantitative data is saying is confirmed or not confirmed. Then with the physical sciences, we have been having these complaints. But you see, you do more of experimental research and you go into this, I think, disease modeling and all that. Honestly, I don't have much knowledge about how your research approach and methodology goes. That is why I always try as much not to commit myself and go into that domain. But looking at one of the explanations from the exploratory designs, you could see that even in the experimental studies that you are doing, how to select your participants, some of the variables to explore, even the way and manner to carry out your intervention or your experiment, you need to collect qualitative data first before you get guidelines on how to go about the quantitative aspect, that is bringing in the experiment. For now, honestly, that's what I can say. Then the madam who spoke on using the concurrent design, when you have two groups of people, let's say teachers and students, I know her question will want to wave to, should she use or should we use the same instrument, questions, for both teachers and students, or she might want to collect qualitative data and collect quantitative data from the teachers and the students, maybe interviewing the teachers and interviewing the students. In this case, if it is just one objective that you would want to compare teachers and students results, their data. Here, using a qualitative data from one sample to confirm or disconfirm a quantitative data from one sample might not be that likely. The reason why I'm saying this is that the two groups of people must be measured on the same scale. For data analysis, they must be measured on the same scale, and that is one of the best ways that you can know whether what you are looking for is different or the same among the groups. But let me add to it that there are studies, okay, where one research question, you see you need only qualitative data there. Another research question, you need only quantitative data. Another research question, you need the two types of data. In this case, you cannot say you are using the concurrent, the exploratory, the explanatory, because here you are not going to use any data to confirm the other. For example, if research question 1, you need only quantitative data, and research question 2, you need only qualitative data. What happens here is that in describing your design, you have to let your readers know that there are two approaches, not mixed methods approach. There are two approaches that you are using for your work. One is the qualitative, one is the quantitative. And for the quantitative aspect, this is the design I am using. Okay, because that particular data you are going to collect, only collect data using quantitative modes. You need only the quantitative aspect of the data for that research question. But another research question that you need the qualitative data, you can say for the qualitative aspect of my study, this is the design I am using. That's why we took time to go through the qualitative designs and the quantitative designs. So when in the case of some of these things, you can be obvious and say, yes, the two approaches are applicable in my work, but they are not mixed methods. Okay, you are not using one data to confirm the other. You are not using one data to explain the other. Here, the two types of data you are collecting are so different per your research questions. So I am using the qualitative and the quantitative approaches. But in each of the approaches, this is the design that I am using.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Grasag. I think our time is fast, and so we take our last batch of questions. So, Sir Wallace. Sir Wallace.
Yes,
Please ask your question. Yes. Exactly.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to know, for example, if let's say I'm interested in a program of teacher environment as to commitment to work with this research program, should I go in for the mixed method? And if I should go in for the mixed method, which aspect? Is it the quantitative or the qualitative that I should employ in this work? That is the question. It's very dicey and I need a letter for me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We take our final question from Aim. Aim.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My question is similar to the one that the lady asked. Renew, if I got it right.
Sure.
Okay, so the question is that, so in actually doing mixed methods, do you use, or does that mean that you have to use the same population? Because the explanation that you just offered with, to the lady's question has revealed to me that in mixing methods, it has to be the situation where responses, quantitative response confirms quality or vice versa, and so on. So if you are working, say, the example that has run through often, teachers and then students, criminals and then the police, and you take views that are quantitative from one end and views that are qualitative from that end. So does that mean that this cannot pass as a mixed methods work? If that is the case, then what is that? How is that called, or how can that be referred to?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my other thing is not actually a question, it's a comment to an observation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Which has to do with, I don't know whether I should say it or I should wait till the questions get addressed.
Oh, you can say it.
Oh, you can
so
go
it
on.
has to, good. It has to do with the way we commence, the seminar sessions or the program. I would want to play that when we fix the time at 5 or 6, we should try to stick to the time. It is not so pleasing to come into an online seminar or session where it is time, the resource person is available and ready, then we come and announce that let's give ourselves some 5 minutes or 10 minutes when we know that it is an online session and people have spent resources on data which is going to be running. So as much as possible, I wish to play that except in situations where the resource persons or the facilitators are not available. Let's try to stick to time. If it is even 3 persons that are available, we can proceed, others to join.
Thank you.
Because
So
it
much.
comes across to me personally as if we have some particular persons in mind that we have to wait for. And when we put out such an announcement, what about if they don't come? So does that mean people who are present will have to be waiting in perpetuity? I don't think it's the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Im, for your nice suggestion. We would look to that. Thank you very much. So I think there is one final person here, Mr. Kofi. Mr. Kofi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, please ask your question.
We thank the facilitator very much for the insight he has given us this evening. My question is, if you want to do a research on, to see some of the villages which has been getting 0% in their BEC, about maybe 3 communities or 4 communities, and you want to do a research work on that one, well, is it going to be appropriate to use the mixed method, or you need to pick only one A for this one, about 2 or 3 communities? That's the question I want to ask.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Christian, you can take over.
So putting Mr. Sawala's question and the last person's question together.
Okay.
The choice of design that you want, or the choice of approach that you want to use, is dependent on your problem. How you, the researcher, you want to approach it. What kind of information do you need? And how best do you want that information to be presented, okay, and interpreted to your readers? So if we're looking at something about how the environment influences teachers' commitment to work, someone might want to go purely quantitative. Someone might want to go purely qualitative. Someone might want to go both qualitative and quantitative. In this case, when you weigh the benefits, the advantages, the merits that come with each of these approaches to the research, when you weigh them together with their disadvantages, per your problem and your purpose, the in-depth information that you want to get, you choose whether you want to do the qualitative approach or quantitative approach. Teacher commitment, the environment influencing teacher commitment, someone can go purely qualitative and collect rich data to even analyze. Someone can go purely quantitative and collect rich data and analyze and do interpretations, which will make a lot of sense. Someone can also go with the mixed method and collect very rich data to make a lot of sense. So in this case, I will not say do qualitative, do quantitative, or do mixed method. This is a social problem. And per the resources you have, the time you have, what kind of interpretation and results do you need? What information do you need? You choose whether you go quantitative or qualitative. Then the one on a particular village who is getting, the student getting 0. They are not saying 0, but they perform badly in standard examinations or national examinations. In this case, the fact that performance in examination comes in, then there is a need for that quantitative aspect to show. Now, whether you are going to only do quantitative or you add qualitative to it, depends. You might want to see what are those factors that are influencing these people's performance, that are dwindling their performance. You can collect qualitative data on that, or you can collect quantitative data and compare that quantitative data to the people's performance and see the extent to which those factors are affecting their performance. Okay, now, to what extent would that work? To me, as a researcher, I would have gone more to observe how do teachers teach these people? What are these people's anxiety levels when it comes to examinations? How do they themselves learn? All these things come into play when we are talking about student performance. So as a researcher, I would have gone more with the two approaches, that is the qualitative and the quantitative approach. Okay, so that's the best I would say to this. And then Mr. Im, with the mixed method, whether you are supposed to use same population, the police and the criminal, the teacher and the students. In this case, the information you want, is it about one person that the responses of the other are going to influence? For example, if we are looking at teaching methods of teachers, you know, you and I, when they bring us questionnaire or someone comes to interview us and want to see how we teach, we say all the nice things. But is that the case when students are queried on how teachers teach? So in this case, I might collect either a quantitative or qualitative data from teachers, then collect either quantitative or qualitative data from students and compare these two data that I have collected. So because sometimes interviewing students, I mean, there are many, okay? Because there are many, one or two of them, and we know we have individual differences in the class. A teacher who comes to teach, rap, and go. A very good student have no problem with that. But when we give questionnaires to these students to respond to how their teachers teach, you will see that we have varying information from them. Now, after analyzing these results, we can now come back to the teachers and conduct a qualitative aspect of the study and collect more insight about what they are saying when we compare it with what the teachers are saying. Is it the same? We can also collect only quantitative data from these two groups of participants and do comparative analysis and see whether there are differences in their views on how the teachers are teaching. There are several ways to go about this. Okay, but the fact that the information you need to collect one data and use it to validate the other. We will go through the mixed methods design. Okay, and there are situations, as I said earlier, that there are situations you would want to collect only the qualitative for a particular objective and collect only a quantitative data on a particular objective. In this case, there are no more mixed methods, because if you say mixed method, then what type of mixed methods? You see, it does not run through any of the types we looked at. So here you make it very specific that you are using both the qualitative and quantitative approaches. But for your qualitative approach, this is the kind of design I am using. Is it case study? Is it phenomenology? Is it grounded theory? You state. When it comes to the quantitative, this is the kind of design I am using. Is it descriptive? Is it experimental? Because the information that you need on that research question can only be gotten with either a qualitative or a quantitative. So here the mixed methods goes, even though you are using the two approaches, just make it clear. You are using the two approaches. In this approach, this is your design. In this approach, this is also your design. But when it comes to the criminal and the police, the teacher and the student, we need to collect comparable data from these two people on one phenomenon. Then we can use it to confirm or disprove what the others are saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. We appreciate your dedication. On behalf of,
I think some people have raised their hands off.
I think Mr. Kofi's question has been answered.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes. So thank you very much, Mr. Christian. On behalf of the leadership of Grasag-Ucc, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude to each and every one of you who joined. But I think Mr. Christian, there is Mr. Wala said he didn't hear the response you gave to his question earlier. So
okay.
I don't know if you can.
Yes, let me spend some few minutes on that. Okay. So, Mr. Sawalas, I was saying, your problem, okay, is multifaceted. Let me put it that way. Depending on the vast information you want from your participants, you could either want to go either the qualitative, quantitative, or the mixed method. Because looking at how the environment influences teachers, teachers' commitment to their work. To me, I would have gone maybe purely qualitative. Okay, because in this, I can get the extent to which they are committed. And all these resources that are available to them to use at their job place, I'm very much aware that is the environmental conditions you are talking about. And when they voice out some of these things to you in person, face-to-face, discussions, interviews, you get to know the extent to which their grievances are aligning. Okay? But if you just go there to take only quantitative data, at the end of the day, you have still restricted them from voicing whatever they want to voice. Yourself, you even restricted yourself from taking in-depth data or information on what is happening there. And if we talk about environmental conditions, they differ from every job place. So even if you have a standard questionnaire to go and measure that, it might not be prudent. So for me, I would have rather gone either the mixed methods or purely qualitative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Mr. Wallace, I hope your question has been answered. So we would like to extend our sincere gratitude to each and every one of you who participated in today's episode. We truly appreciate your participation, and we hope that the information that has been presented today would be useful to you. So thank you very much, Mr. Christian, and thank you to every one of you who participated.
You're welcome.
Have a good night, you all.
You too.